Well, joining us now, a very, very special guest, one of the biggest names in Indian aviation, Mr. Ajay Singh of SpiceJet, the chairman and managing director. Thanks very much for being with us. You must be a fairly relieved man. You've been waiting for flights to resume. It's finally happened today. How much later could you really have extended a grounding of the airline before things got really bad? I mean, this has come very much at the 11th hour, hasn't it?
Well, things were really bad, Vishnu, of course. I mean, they've been bad for airlines around the world. And in India, where there were absolutely no flights, they were terrible. So I think that it couldn't have come sooner. But I think, obviously the priority for the country was to ensure the health and safety of its citizens. And so we fully understand why there was a lockdown and why there was an embargo on flights. But I think at some point of time, I think the realization is beginning to dawn that we might have to live with this virus for a period of time. We just have to take all the precautions that we have to. But the economy has to, get going. And, so flying is an integral part of getting that economy going. And I'm just glad that it's started. And for all that has happened today, it was a day of confusion in the beginning. We were getting SOPs from states right till 12 o'clock last night. There was a lot of negotiation going on between the Civil Aviation Ministry and the states. I think, relatively speaking, the flights went well. We had 400 flights in India today. 83 of those were SpiceJet flights.
Yeah.
And I think they went, not without glitches, but they went relatively well.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What was it like for your crew members to be part of a process where you're reuniting families? Because I think the human interest story in all of this should never be forgotten. You were reuniting children who hadn't seen their parents for months. You were reuniting the elderly with their children. You were reuniting families. You were reuniting friends who couldn't do without each other. So that's huge, isn't it? Just what you are a part of.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. People say, look, are you going to be profitable? Or it's not at all about that. This whole COVID crisis has shown that the most important thing for us as airlines and for us as Indians is first to stand with our fellow citizens. I mean, we've done a lot of work. SpiceJet has been very actively involved in carrying medicines and medical equipment and fruits and vegetables to different parts of the country. We've tried to help various communities around the country. I think this is what makes it worth while to be an airline. So you of course are a commercial enterprise. You need to earn money for your shareholders, etc. But the most important thing and the most useful thing and the most fun, frankly, is being able to help. And some of the stories today were just absolutely amazing. I mean, there was this 5-year-old kid, as some of us read today, who was reunited with his parents. He'd come here to visit his grandparents and got stuck for 2 months. There was a lady who actually wrote to me and said to me that she was suicidal because she had been separated from her family. She was in Delhi. Her young kids were in Mumbai. For 2 months, she hadn't seen them. We sent her today. We actually, were considering applying to the government for a charter flight for her because she was in such a bad way. And we're just glad that we could send her today. So some of these stories, kids coming to visit their old parents. One of them came today because his father is on a ventilator, suffering from COVID. So incredible stories. And this is what makes it worth our while to be an airline, really.
No, I'm so glad you shared those stories, sir. I'm so glad. But tell us, it's very different aviation now. One of the things that you wanted, that the middle seat of planes on flights of the 737 class or the A320 class should be occupied. So the government agreed with you reluctantly, but they finally did. That's made a difference to your economics. But obviously the entire business of crew members being in PPE suits, physical distancing, check-ins, and all of that, That must have required a lot of training on your part for your crew members to ensure that it happened fluently. Was that also a challenge in the last few days?
Oh, certainly. But I think as airlines, we are used to facing challenges. This is one of the most challenging industries in the world. And we are used to facing challenges. I think we have an incredible set of human beings at SpiceJet. All these people, they are used to facing hardship and difficulties and getting through them. Really, I tell you, I always say of SpiceJet and my crew that impossible really is nothing for them. We've just done such incredible things over the last couple of months and in the past as well, when we were nearly shut down and we came back to run a strong airline again. So we have incredible stories of our own, and I'm incredibly proud of the people at SpiceJet.
Do you believe that despite the hardships that your airline has had to face over the last several months, the economic condition of the airline, all airlines, that you still have a strong future in India where you can be back on the path towards economic revival, even though domestic demand is likely to go down?
Certainly. I think that India is one of the very few countries in the world, Vishnu, which has a strong domestic market. I mean, it may not be very strong right now, but it will pick up over a period of time. We have just 3% of our people flying. That number is going to increase. There's no question about it. In fact, with this COVID crisis, I would think that people who are taking these 24-hour, 36-hour train journeys, some of them will shift to aviation as well, because it's just shorter. It's a much more controlled environment. It's just the cleanest and safest way to fly. In terms of the middle seat that you talked about, I think the government was pragmatic because it was really serving no particular health purpose either. I mean, if you say 6 feet is what is required for social distancing in the COVID crisis, where do you get 6 feet in public transport? Will you get that on buses? Will you get that on trains? Will you get that even in your own personal cars? Are you going to say now that, we are going to only have the chauffeur or one guy who's driving the car drive the car, because anybody else who's in the car is within 6 feet? So you have to be practical. I think it's important, and I've spoken to doctors, including to officials of the health ministry, and they say what is really the most important is to wear that face mask. Make sure you wear the face mask. Make sure you keep your hands clean, and make sure you distance to the extent you can. By leaving that one seat, what you would do is you would completely destroy aviation, because planes would not be able to fly then. If that is then replicated to other modes of public transport, then no public transport would actually operate. And if you don't operate public transport, you can't really open an economy. Then you're looking at a lockdown 4.0 or 5.0 or whatever it is. So I think government has taken pragmatic steps, while at the same time creating a protocol which provides the maximum possible safety for passengers. And I think people will get used to it, Vishnu. Indians are a very resilient lot, and people get used to adverse conditions really quickly and move on with life.
Yeah. What relief do you expect from the government going forward? Not just your airline, but obviously the sector.
I think as a sector, we want to ensure that we have a level playing field with our competitor airlines around the world. What is happening is that Indians, as we expand outwards, we will increasingly compete with the Middle Eastern airlines, with the Far East airlines. All of these airlines are funded by their governments. They've got billions of dollars through this crisis. They also have a tax structure which is very different from ours. So I think it's incredibly important that if India is to be a major economic power, if India is to be a major aviation power, and we can easily be with our strong domestic market, something that all these guys don't have, these network carriers, because their job is really to take passengers from one country to another, which is not their own. So they don't have strong domestic markets of their own. India has an incredible opportunity at this time, being amongst the very few countries that has a strong domestic market. But we need to make sure that our taxation structure, this aviation fuel coming under GST, the cost at our airports, the way that is designed, we really take a long, hard look at that and make sure that we bring those costs at par with our peers around the world. It's fine if we don't get money directly from the government. Just give us a level playing field, and Indians and Indian carriers will show that they can be the best in the world.
If that level playing field is not offered to you, then will your survival, and by yours I mean, you know, a few airlines in Indian aviation, will that be potentially on the edge?
I think it's a very, very difficult time for airlines, and certainly it will put some airlines on the edge. But as I said to you before, Vishnu, we are a very resilient lot. We will probably be the last to go down. We will find a way to make it through, and nobody, you know, gave us half a chance of being where we are today. We've started flying, and in the case of SpiceJet, for example, I mean, we ran a very successful cargo operation for the last 2 or 3 months, and we've made margins. We've provided a service to our country, and we've shown that given an opportunity, we can reinvent ourselves. So I think you will find that Indian carriers and Indian businesses in general are extremely innovative and can survive in very tough conditions.
When we spoke a few months back in Davos, it was a different world, and we discussed briefly your plans about more international routes, perhaps larger aircraft. We spoke about business class, and is that all gone now, or is it something that's fairly unimaginable in the present context?
I think it's been postponed, and it will happen. I think there is a unique opportunity again, Vishnu, that up till now we are used to these network carriers, these Gulf carriers and Far East carriers taking Indians from India to their hubs and then distributing them to Europe and the US and Australia and such places. I think time has come when we ourselves as Indian carriers will take our passengers whenever we are allowed to, whenever it is feasible to do so. Oil prices are low at this time. It gives us all better economics. And I think this is the time when Indian carriers must take their own people and their own cargo throughout the world. I think the government of India should, make a policy that encourages that and encourages and ensures that India itself becomes a large hub for international operations. Why can't we be the hub for traffic which flows from our east to our west and from our west to our east? We are a big country, and we are the natural hub, and we must play a leading role in aviation in the future.
All right, Mr. Ajay Singh, thank you very much for speaking to us, and your enthusiasm at the sector, and that shines through even in these difficult times. But thank you so much for sharing those stories of people, children, families who've gained so much today. Thank you very much indeed.